Ken Whiting here, and in this video I am talking about how to pack for a week-long paddling trip. And it's fresh in my mind right now because I just got back from a trip down the Petawawa River in Algonquin Park. Now, I didn't do it the normal way. I took a crossover kayak, the Liquid Logic Remix XP10. And a crossover kayak is a whitewater kayak that is designed for multi-day trips. It has more capacity, it has a hatch in the back, it has a drop-down skeg so you can go straighter across the flat sections. But most people do the Petawawa and go into Algonquin Park in a canoe because it has a lot of advantages. The canoe is faster in the flat sections, it can still handle some good whitewater, and it makes portaging a lot easier because your gear is all in these big packs that you can throw on your back, throw the canoe over your head, and you're off to the races. When you're in a kayak, you have to break your stuff up into tiny little dry bags in order to fit it in. And then if you do have to when you do have to portage, you have to manage, you have to deal with all these little dry bags because putting a fully loaded kayak on your shoulder is not an option. It's just too heavy. Just not gonna happen. Now, the reason I took the kayak over a canoe is because there's a lot of whitewater on the Petawawa River, and I felt that with my experience, I could run a lot of that whitewater and minimize the portaging by being in a kayak versus a canoe. I just needed the right water level, which fortunately I just got. I was at the low end, but I got it. Packing the kayak, I had to take a somewhat minimalist approach, not nearly as much space as a canoe. And so I'm gonna walk through all the gear that I took on this week-long river trip. I'm gonna talk about the camping gear. I'm gonna talk about the food and water gear and system that I use, and I'm gonna talk about the paddling gear. Something I'm gonna also mention along the way is gear that really stood out, gear that was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I brought this, but also gear that I said, you know what, I wouldn't bring this next time. So let's start with the tent that I was using. This is the Big Agnes Salt Creek SL3, and this has been my go-to tent for the past year and a half about. It's a 3-person tent, which means for just me, there's lots of space in it. I love that, but it's only 5 pounds and it's a pretty small package, and so why not have the extra space? I just actually got a 2-person tent to try it. It's a little smaller and it's a little lighter, so we'll see how it goes. But love this tent, super quick and easy to put up and take down. Great fly system. It has doors on both sides, so it doesn't matter which way you orient the tent. It has lots of pockets and nice little features on the inside. Smart tent, love it. I also brought a ground sheet to go with it. I knew I was going to deal with some rain, and I did, and so I'm glad I brought that thing. Sleeping bag wise, I brought the Zen Bivy. Well, the Zen Bivy sleeping system, it's more than just the bag, it's the bag that has a little air. Sleeping bag comes in a dry bag that has air release there. That's not me making that sound. And the new Flex Air mattress from Zen Bivy, they pair together really well. They work so well together. This small little Flex Air mattress, small and light. When you pump it up, it's nice and thick and super comfy. It's got 4-way stretch fabric. It's really a treat. That was new for me to try this trip. And this was also new, their pillow. But the cool thing about this pillow is it's got your typical air bladder inside, so that controls how much loft, how big the pillow is, but it then has this down insert. And so when you put the airbag and then the down insert over top inside the pillowcase, it really feels like one of the pillows on my bed back at home. A little bit bulkier than some camp pillows for sure, but for me, well worth bringing. Tarp. Needed to have a rain tarp. I didn't have any small traditional tarp, but I got this thing recently. This is the Eno Pro Fly. This is the Eno's tarp designed for their hammock system. And I tested the hammock system earlier this spring, loved it, and loved the tarp system, and I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna bring this thing. It's so small, light, easy to put up. I had a boomer of a thunderstorm in particular, and this thing worked great. If you've seen any of my videos, you know that for me, there's certain comfort is a key part of the experience. Although I didn't have a ton of extra space in the little kayak, I had to make room for a camp chair. This is a camp chair I got on Amazon like 3 years ago. It's not the lightest, but it's lasted, and I would definitely always bring a camp chair if I had the space. Saw for fires. This is the Zubat. I recently got this spring, and it just goes through wood like crazy. It is awesome. A good saw is so worth it if you're gonna have fires. Here's the thing, on this trip, I didn't have a single fire. And the reason I didn't have a single fire is, well, two reasons. For one, it didn't get dark until 9:30. And by that time, I was done. I was ready for bed. But more so, it was the bugs. I went in prime bug season. There are black flies, there were mosquitoes, and there were some deer flies even too, but the black flies and mosquitoes were intense. There's no way I was hanging out around a fire, and I didn't really take that into consideration. And so next, even though I love this saw, if I did this trip again this time of year, I wouldn't bother bringing a saw because I wouldn't have a campfire. Now, some safety gear. First aid kit. This is the Adventure Medical Kit. 9. It's about as small a first aid kit as I would want to bring. I might even actually get the next size up, but it's a pretty comprehensive little kit. I also have a repair kit. I always bring a repair kit. This repair kit has some rope in it, extra rope in it. It has duct tape. It has tear aid, this stuff is amazing. It's super sticky, stretchy stuff it fixes everything from dry bags to tents, tarps. I mean, it really is wonderful stuff. I've got some aqua seal in here. I've got some patches for the air mattress, some zip ties. Nothing heavy, nothing substantial in here, but all stuff that can come in really handy. Fortunately, on this trip, I didn't need any of that. Other piece of safety gear I'd say is Zoleo. It's a communication device. This uses a satellite network, so it works everywhere. Every night I would turn this thing on, and it would let me message my wife and let her know, I'm good. All is well, and if something wasn't up, I could message. It also has an SOS button that you can just press if you really need help. The other cool thing about it is it lets you pick up weather, which I did every night, and it's really great to know what the forecast is. Bear spray. I'm typically not too worried about bears because I keep a clean campsite and I deal with my food appropriately. This was actually the first time I've ever brought bear spray, but a solo week-long trip. You know, I figured better safe than sorry. This is the real deal, 30% DEET. So I knew I needed strong stuff. And I brought 2 because I knew I was gonna go through it, and I did. I went through it pretty quick. I kept one on my day bag on the kayak and the other one in my personal gear. Both of them were in the Ziploc, so they didn't get all my other stuff. Oh my gosh, it would have been miserable without that stuff. TP. Got a little low on the TP. Headlamp. This is the Silva 1200 or free 1200M. Really cool headlamp. Got a nice big rechargeable battery pack. Kicks out 1200 lumens. So, I mean, this thing can blind someone from a long way away. It doesn't last that long. It's, 3 or 4 hours when you're kicking it at full intensity, but you really don't need it at full intensity very often. It's too bright in most settings. At the low setting, which is plenty bright, like I never used it out of low, it lasts for 35 hours, so tons of space. The other cool thing, what I love about this system is the detachable battery. It just, boom, it's on. Every time I pack up my bag in the morning, I always, no matter what headlamp I have, I take the batteries out so that it doesn't accidentally turn on and I blow my batteries. This just makes it super easy to do that. I did bring a backup headlamp just in case, because it sucks not having light in the backcountry. And lastly, I brought a Gerber multi-tool. And this thing pretty much goes with me on every trip because, you never know when you're gonna need it. All right, so now let's talk food and water. This is the kitchen that I brought. The foundation was this stove right here. This is the Primus Light Plus. This is really for solo travel. It allows you to boil 500 mils of water, and it does it fast. It's really efficient. I really like this stove. It has an igniter on it, so it was really just boom, it's on right away. Screws on top of one of these canisters. This is an 8-ounce canister. And I brought 2 canisters. I didn't even get through 1 canister because this thing boils water so efficiently. You know, I'm not sure how many boils I actually did with this 1 canister, but there's still plenty of boils left in it too. So really efficient system. Definitely not for gourmet cooking, but it was great for this, for a type of trip where I needed a compact cooking system. Really just needed to boil water for dehydrated meals. I did bring a backup stove. Believe it or not, that is the backup stove. Crazy. This thing is the Grail Pathfinder. It takes up no space or weight, and this is just a little fold-out stove that screws on top of the canister if for some reason this thing crapped the bed. Yeah, nice to have a backup stove that really is a no-brainer to bring along. My plates, this is my first time trying the Sea to Summit collapsible plates and the plate and bowl, which are kind of like basically both bowls. How easy is that? It takes up no space. I love these things, and super easy to wash too. I brought a heavier mug. This is a double-walled Yeti mug. I mean, it's my coffee. Coffee's going to get a little bit of extra attention. Bringing along my mug is kind of like my heavier mug. It's kind of like bringing along my camp chair. I just don't leave home without it. But I did go minimalist for the coffee making. I brought the Brew Trek pour over. Now the Brew Trek pour over is as simple as this. It's just this frame that folds out, and it's got a cloth filter in it. You put your grinds in there and boil some water, pour away. Makes a great cup of coffee, and it takes up almost no space in your pack. Last trip I did, I actually brought, Brew Trek has a grinder, so you can bring whole beans and then grind fresh coffee into the filter, but the grinder's a little bit heavier. It was a luxury that having to go minimalist on this trip, I didn't bring this time. Utensils, I just brought 2 utensils. I was eating dehydrated meals out of a bag or out of the bowl most of the time. I brought 2, one as a backup to the other. Something I did learn on this trip with dehydrated meals, if you are a connoisseur of dehydrated meals like I am, when you're stirring the dehydrated meals, one of these sporks, which is a fork and spoon combination, actually catches on the bottom of the bag, and I don't think I was going to ever rip through it, but an actual spoon is better for stirring a dehydrated bag. For washing, another cool Sea to Summit product. Sea to Summit makes some really smart products. I'm going to test out more and more of them. This is just a little dishwashing station. It's got a little thing of dishwashing, biodegradable dishwashing detergent, and a scrub. So boom, that was really easy, nice to have. Now for water, I brought 2 things for water. I brought my tried and true dromedary bag. This is the Platypus gravity filter, where you just scoop up some water from the river, hang it up in the tree, connect the system, and gravity pushes the water through the filter, through the carbon filter, to remove bad taste as well. And this is a 4-liter bag, tons of water for every campsite, and there's no effort involved. I also brought, this is the Grail Titanium water filter, water press. Now, I've used the Grail press before, and I really like it. The idea of this, behind this thing, is that you just scoop water out of the river, or whatever source, and then the filter is on this, and then you push it down, and the water is forced through the filter into the secondary compartment here, and you can just drink straight from that, or use it however you want. Like I said, I've used this in the past and I really liked it. I didn't use this on this trip at all. I thought that when I was paddling that I would be like, you know what, instead of carrying a water bottle full of water, I'll just scoop water out of the lake or the river, press it, and then boom, have water on demand. Really difficult to press this when you're in a kayak. You do need some real pressure to push this down. The way you really do it is just you put it on a rock or something hard, and then you lean your body weight into it. Wasn't possible from a kayak. And when I got to camp, I didn't want to do any pressing. I just wanted to hang. It was too easy to hang up the dromedary, the gravity filter bag, and let it do the work. So this ended up actually just taking up space on the trip. So even though it's not a knock on the product, it's just not, it wasn't the right product, it wasn't the right tool for the trip in this case. I did bring an Nalgene so that once I had filtered water, I could take the filtered water with me on the kayak. A couple of other just food related items. I brought a bag of Ziplocs, extra large Ziplocs, as well as medium Ziplocs, and garbage bags. Ziplocs in particular are really great. When you put stuff in a garbage bag, the garbage bags tend to get holes in them. Ziplocs are way more durable, and so I'll often put stuff, have a garbage bag going as my garbage, but then put that garbage into a Ziploc so I can seal it, and so it's more durable. And just Ziplocs in general are nice to have. Other things I brought that are kind of food and water related, not more food related, is if I needed to cook over a fire for some reason, didn't really see it. I did bring a little bit of fire starter. I have a few lighters scattered throughout, and I have a fire mitt. This is just a glove so that I can handle stuff around a fire without getting burned. Two things I want to talk about food-wise that I'm not going to go through all the dehydrated food that I had because I ate it and I can't show you it. But hydration drink mix was really nice to have. This is Scratch Labs, Gatorade, whatever. Just makes a big difference to get those electrolytes, get some sugar when you're working hard throughout the day. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, this is something I tried for the first time. When I was doing some shopping, going through the grocery store, I came across these prepared tuna salads. This one's couscous with chickpeas, peas, and tomatoes. This was a great lunch. I only brought a couple of them, but I enjoyed both of them as lunch. Super convenient, super small to bring along, pretty darn light too, and cheap too. This was either $3 or $4 for a lunch. That's going to be something I bring along on more camp trips. Now let's talk about paddling gear. Starting from the bottom and working our way up. Shoes. I was using the Astral Loyak water shoe. Now, I'm a big fan of the Astral Loyaks, and they were my go-to shoe all of last year, and now that the water's warmed up a bit, they are this year as well. That being said, for this kind of a trip, a multi-day trip where I'm spending that much time day after day in the water, but also at camp, what I did find was that sand inevitably got in here, and they were such long days that I got rough patches. I got sore patches on my feet because of the sand. And so I don't know what the solution is. A higher cut bootie would have been nice. It would have kept the sand out of the boot. But the flip side to that is my feet would have been hot and really stinky, and could have got nasty in other ways. When your feet are that wet and you're dealing with such different environments and you're working hard in them, it's really tough to keep. You have to stay on top of your feet. I ended up bringing moleskin, which I used to protect the sore spot. So anyway, something to know. On the bottom, I was using the NRS's 0.5 millimeter Hydro Skin shorts. And then really when the bugs got too much, because the heat was fine for shorts, I went with the long pants version of it. And over top of that, because, I like to be discreet with showing my butt in tight neoprene, I just wore their Benny board shorts over top of that. This Hydro Skin I've been using, it's been my go-to for such a wide variety of conditions. It's neoprene, but it's also got like a fleece soft inside, so it doesn't feel like neoprene right against you. It's a really comfortable base layer for the bottoms in particular for me. I was using the NRS Drylander skirt. And it was actually, this is a large deck. It was a bit of a struggle to get on the deck of the Liquid Logic Remix XP10. It wasn't hard to get off. I wasn't worried about that, but it's a bit of a stretch. Now on top, my main layer was the NRS Silk Weight long sleeve shirt. And this was what I wore most of the time. When it was hot out and I was doing a lot of travel, I would just wear this. And then when it was getting cooler, or I was in whitewater, real whitewater, and I was gonna get wet, I would then throw the NRS Orion paddling jacket on top of this. Now the Orion paddling jacket, this has been one of my go-to jackets for a long time, for years now as well. It's got a hood. It has a neoprene neck gasket, which is so much more comfortable than a latex neck gasket. It isn't quite as dry as a latex gasket, but so much more comfortable. It does though have the latex gaskets at the wrist, and that really stops any water from getting in this way. And that's where, unless you're flipping and swimming, that's where so much of the water is going to come in, is dripping down your arms. So love the wrist gaskets with the neck neoprene gasket for comfort. This was what I put over top when I didn't want to get wet. The life jacket that I used was the NRS Odyssey life jacket. Now this is one of their touring life jackets, not a whitewater specific life jacket. The reason I chose this one over one of the whitewater jackets like the Ninja is because of all the pockets in this thing. It has side pockets here, plus it has the big pockets in front on both sides. It just has so much room to store gear. And what I had in these pockets was this sunscreen and lip stuff on this side. I had my phone in this pocket here, which is the iPhone Max, so it's a big phone that fits in there, which is nice. I was putting snacks, granola bars, things like that I wanted quick access to into this pocket, and then I actually had my mic kit in this pocket. But just, man, pockets on a life jacket are just so nice to have. When I wasn't on the flat water, when I was in whitewater, I was using the WRSI Current helmet. Again, I've been using this one for a number of years now. Other gear, paddling gear that I had, well, here's one, a sponge. It's so nice to get the water and sand out of the boat really quick. Otherwise, it's a pain to do. I brought a throw rope. I didn't bring this one so much for traditional rescue purposes because, you know, it was in my kayak, and, you know, if I needed it, it'd probably be in the kayak that I needed it to rescue. So it was more, this was for around camp for tying a drawing line, and this also served as my main line for the tarp, my rain tarp to hang over. Dry bags. I use all sorts of dry bags between 5 liters and 15 liters. This is a 10-liter dry bag. This is a 15-liter dry bag. So from smaller than this to, I did use on the back of my kayak, on top of the kayak, I used a 25 or 30 liter dry bag, but most of the bags were small like this. 5 to 20 liter tops, mostly 5 to 15. Now, 2 types of dry bags. This one here is really nice and lightweight. This is the Hydro Lock, the Ether Hydro Lock from NRS. The downside of this dry bag is they're just not as durable as their tough sacks. They compact down much easier, they're lighter, and so you want to use them, and I did use them, but I did end up having to put a couple of patches on them. I'm hard on gear, and I'm in a rough environment, and when I'm pulling stuff out of the boat, yanking stuff out of the boat, throwing it onto rocks, it took its toll on a couple of the dry bags. It's not as light, it doesn't compact as well, but these tough sacks are so durable. And so anything I could not get wet went in here. Anything that didn't mind if it got wet, like a lot of snacks and stuff that were in Ziploc bags as well. I would use the lightweight dry bag. And last but not least, on the deck, I used the new Gear Lab Outdoors Deck Pod Pro. This just came out this year. I've been using the Deck Pod and then the Deck Pod 2 last year anytime I'm touring. It's just such a convenient deck bag to have on the boat. It clips to your deck line so easily. It's a smart system. I always put it on. But the cool thing about the Deck Pod Pro really is the GoPro mount that is attached, which has this nice structured frame. So it's not flimsy. It's not falling over place. Even if your bag isn't full, it's still holding its shape. And I use this for the GoPro whenever I was paddling through whitewater. Now that's pretty much it. This is all the gear, all the camping gear, all the food and water gear, and all the paddling gear that I brought for a 7-day river trip. The other question is, how did I pack it all? Well, I already mentioned I packed it into small dry bags that I could fit into the kayak for the most part. I put all the camping gear, like the light camping gear, my sleeping bag, a sleeping pad, the pillow, I actually put the camp chair, which isn't extra light, but all of that went in the front of the boat in their own dry bags. The tent I put just behind the seat, is in the center part of the kayak. And I also had, that's where I had all my camera gear in the center of the kayak. In the back, in the stern of the kayak, that's where my kitchen gear and all the food went, along with any extras that I had. And that tended to be the heavier gear that was in the back. I made the decision right from the beginning that I would prefer the back of the kayak to be heavier than the front of the kayak, so that when I'm going through whitewater, the bow was going to be a bit higher and I could keep the nose above the water more. Turns out I just had a lot of weight. I'm guessing when all was said and done with all the food I brought too many snacks. I'm thinking my total weight was around 70 pounds worth of gear on top of me. And so I was maxing out the kayak. I had to put a personal bag, my personal clothing, in a dry bag on the back deck, tie it down there. But the big thing was, before getting there, I did a test pack. I made sure everything was going to fit at home, and I figured out the system as well as I could at home. The system got refined a little bit while I was out there, but it was so key, and I can't stress this enough for you. Before your trip, do a full packing of your boat at home in a controlled environment, so that you're not trying to figure it out and having to come up with creative solutions when you're at the put-in. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and you've learned something from it. I don't know it all though, and so I'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas, things that I could do differently, things you'd suggest to bring, leave a comment down below. As always, give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to Paddle TV if you haven't already, because I got lots more paddling and camping tips, gear reviews, and paddling adventures coming your way.